Thank you, everybody, for being here. I've been called a lot of names in my life. Tammy, Lieutenant Colonel, Senator, and other names that I can't mention in mixed company. But I have to say, Mommy, though, is probably, without a doubt, my favorite name. It's the one my 5-year-old uses when she runs into the house after dance class and poos on my sleeve, eager to show me what she learned during her lesson. It's the one my 9-year-old says when she announces her latest idea of what she wants to be when she grows up. Right now, she's leaning towards becoming an Army cyber warrior. Never a helicopter pilot. I don't know why. My girls are my everything, but I likely would not have ever been able to have them had I not had access to basic reproductive rights that Americans up until recently had been depending on for decades. Because after a decade of struggle with infertility post my service in Iraq, I was only able to get pregnant through IVF. IVF is the reason that I've gotten to experience the chaos and beauty, the stress and the joy that is motherhood. IVF is the reason that my husband and I aren't just Tammy and Brian, we're mom and dad, which sounds much better when they say it than I do. But for countless hopeful parents, that desperately sought after dream of becoming a parent just became so much harder. Last week, Alabama's Supreme Court ruled that frozen embryos created through IVF should be considered children under state law, a ruling based on extreme ideology rather than on medical science, and one that throws IVF access into chaos for countless women as they and their doctors try to figure out whether they might be criminalized for simply trying to start a family. If you're thinking that this makes no sense, you're right. The very people who claim to be defending family values are actively trying to enact policies that would actually prevent Americans from creating those families. IVF providers around the state in Alabama have already paused treatment out of fear that their doctors and patients could be criminally punished. And now that the first domino has fallen, it may only be a matter of time before more hospitals make the same call, before more courts issue similar rulings putting more women at risk. You know, I was stationed in Alabama for a bit when I was in the Army. In fact, it's the home of Fort Novosel, the home of Army aviation. I didn't know it at the time, but my infertility would become one of the most heartbreaking struggles of my life. My miscarriage more painful than any wound I ever earned on the battlefield. So it's a little personal to me when a majority male court suggests that people like me who are not able to have kids without the help of modern medicine should be in jail cells and not taking care of their babies in nurseries. I know I'm not alone when I struggle to understand how politicians who support this kind of policy can possibly call themselves pro-life. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, actually even before then, when Donald Trump promised to only appoint justices who would overturn it, I warned that red states would come for IVF, and now they have. But they aren't just going to stop in Alabama. Mark my words, if we don't act now, it will only get worse. That's why tomorrow I'm headed to the Senate floor to call on my colleagues to pass, via unanimous consent, my Access to Family Building Act, which would ensure that every American's right to become a parent via treatments like IVF is fully protected, regardless of what state they live in, guaranteeing that no hopeful parent or doctor is punished. We face a lot of tough calls as senators. This just isn't one of them. 1 in 4 married women have difficulty getting pregnant or carrying a pregnancy to term. 1 in 4. That doesn't even include single women, single individuals, and other families also trying to conceive. So to my Republican colleagues, please think about how many that 1 in 4 represents in your state. Women willing to go through expensive, painful treatments just for a chance to experience the most banal moments of parenthood. Just to have a newborn to swaddle, a toddler whose shoes need to be tied. And if you believe that they should have the right to be called mom without also being called a criminal, then all you have to do to prove it is help us pass this should be obvious legislation. Because in this nightmarish moment, it's nowhere near enough to send out a vaguely worded tweet suggesting that you care about women's rights, despite a voting record to the absolute contrary. No, instead, if you truly care about the sanctity of families, if you're genuinely, actually, honestly interested in protecting IVF, then you need to show it by not blocking this bill on the floor tomorrow. It's that simple. Thank you.